My name is Suraj. I'll give you a little bit of a background in terms of what I've done so far and what this session is going to be about in a minute. But I just wanted to take a little time off at the start of the conversation to just talk to you guys about how this lockdown is affecting a lot of people, how there seems to be a lot of fear, panic, etc., and how, as a community, we've got to get together and deal with this particular pandemic. I've been at home for the past a week or so. It's been a little dreary. I understand a lot of you have been home as well. Kids are at school. 10th grade board exams have gotten postponed, etc. Some of them have already finished. CBSE is already finished, I think. So in terms of that, there's a lot of uncertainty. And so let's just take a minute, step back into ourselves, introspect, figure out how we're going to deal with this crisis, etc. And then slowly, as we move ahead, as we distance ourselves socially, stay at home, see the worst of the pandemic, we can get back to our lives together. All right. Okay, let's get started with the video itself, with the session itself. So I'm going to talk to you primarily about three major things today. One, what artificial intelligence is. Two, why you should be learning artificial intelligence in your intermediate or high school level. Why is it important for us to learn right now? And three, how we plan to teach it at Gatik itself. All right. So even before I get to artificial intelligence and stuff like that, in terms of the logistics for the video, I can see comments. So anytime you have questions, etc., just make sure to put them in comments. I will take them as and when I can, as and when I'm able to look at any of the comments. All right. We will first get started with what artificial intelligence itself is. I know a lot of people have heard the buzzwords of artificial intelligence, statistics, machine learning, computer vision, etc. All I'm going to try to do today is from a high school perspective, that is from a 10th, 11th, and 12th grader perspective, demystify what artificial intelligence is, then move on to studying about artificial intelligence, why that is very important for us to sort of learn, how we implement, what are careers that are being shaped by AI right now, what are sort of sectors that AI has already gotten into, and then move on to how we plan to teach AI at Gatik itself. So the first one we're going to talk about essentially is what is artificial intelligence. All right. So there's this very sort of a fundamental concept that I want to bring up, and I think intuitively this made the most sense to me. Imagine you're a computer programmer, right? Any programming language, be it Python, C, C++, Java, whatever programming language. When you open up your computer and when you're trying to create a program or an algorithm or whatever, what you do essentially is give a set of rules to the computer using the programming language. For example, let's go back to a very sort of a primitive example. You wake up, let's say you have to go to school or college. You set a few rules for yourself. You set up an alarm which wakes you up at a certain period of time. That is rule number one. You figure out what are chores that you have to do before you get ready for school. That's rule number two. Then you go ahead and get ready for school. That's rule number three. You get in your car or whatever vehicle or the school bus. That's rule number four. You sit in the bus and the bus takes a left or a right or goes straight or whatever. It's following preset sort of rules to get to the destination. Right? So all of these are rules, are steps that you need to follow to get to the endpoint, which in this case is getting to the school itself. These are things that you could program within a computer, and that is traditional computer programming. What AI has done is it's essentially flipped this rule-based model of getting to your destination. For example, if I just feed my daily routine to the computer, I give the computer essentially the last 5 years of my daily routine, and then tell the computer or ask the computer to tell me what I should be doing the next day. And if the computer is actually able to do that, that is artificial intelligence. So I'm going to draw a major distinction here between traditional computer programming and artificial intelligence. Traditional computer programming is a set of rules, is a set of algorithms that you have to go through to get to the final destination or the final objective. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, does not have rules that a user has to define. Within artificial intelligence, you just have to give it examples, and the computer itself learns these rules, figures out what is working, what is not, and then gets you to your destination. That's the primary sort of a difference between traditional computer programming and artificial intelligence. Okay, now that we've learned what artificial intelligence is, I want to take it a step further and formally define what AI is. Artificial intelligence is the computer understanding and learning from data that is given to the computer and then figuring out what the next steps are. Again, comparing this to traditional programming, computer programming, traditional computer programming, you have to tell the computer that you have to do this, do it this way, do it that way. In artificial intelligence, you just give it all of the data that you've essentially done, and then the computer itself, the algorithm itself, figures out how you've done it and also tells you how to do it in the future. That's what artificial intelligence is. So that's question number one answered. Let's go to question number two. Why should you learn AI? Most of students that will come to Gatik will be MPC, MEC, CEC, and a bunch of other sort of courses, right? Let's talk about specific career paths that exist for all of these streams. And then I will try and bring up an example of how AI has, is, or will be revolutionizing this particular career sector as such. Let's start with the traditional MPC. I myself am an engineer and I understand the day-to-day workings of an engineer, and so I can talk about this at length. But essentially what is happening within engineering essentially is the fact that everything has sort of been getting on the track of being automated. So a lot of data is being collected. Data in terms of how particular machines are working, how particular sort of processes within a bigger process is working, data in terms of pressure, data in terms of, let's say, temperature conditions, throughput, or of an engineering machine itself. All of this data is being collected today. Using all of this data, you can come up with a lot of optimized workflows and processes. And I'll give you an example here. Let's say you're the owner of a manufacturing industry, or you're an engineer in a manufacturing industry that is manufacturing a certain chemical product or a mechanical product, right? As part of the engineering process itself, there's going to be multiple components of it. Let's say the first component is crushing, grinding of the raw material. The second component is mixing it with another sort of a raw material. The third component is under specific temperature and pressure conditions, doing certain things in terms of getting a reaction, and then moving on to, let's say, a couple of different type of services, the end product itself, right? So these are various things that comprise of the bigger sort of a thing in terms of making of the product itself. How is AI revolutionizing this entire work stream? Whenever you take individual components of the entire supply chain, you see that there are specific data that you can collect in terms of how much of the raw material do I need? At what temperature and pressure conditions is the raw material churning? Is the raw material sort of mixing with the other one? And what is the most optimized or efficient way of getting to the throughput itself? So these are specific things that AI can help with. And this is just in engineering. Let's say a couple of you want to go ahead and become CAs. And this is something that we've gone ahead and actually implemented for the biggest CA in the city of Hyderabad. So I'm getting a few questions, and I will get to that in a little bit. I just wanted to talk about the CA's aspect of it. A lot of people get within specifically the core CA's duty is to collect a lot of documents, automate them, and then put it into tax sort of brackets, etc. Specifically within this, one of the things that we've done with artificial intelligence essentially is to go ahead and automate the entire workflow. Whereas whenever there's any sort of handwritten invoices, there are algorithms which can just scan that, put them into the specific sort of terms within the Excel sheet, and then automate the entire tax filing sort of the procedure as well. So that's how CAs are using artificial intelligence. There's a question from Mr. Satyam. He essentially is asking us how AI is being used in civil engineering, right? This is a very, very important question. I'll get to that in a little bit. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background in terms of engineering itself. Engineering itself, at this point in time, there is no engineer that can do well at this point in time without the capability of working with computers. That's exactly going to be true in the next 5 years for engineers without artificial intelligence skills. Engineers without AI skills are going to be essentially defunct in the next, um, sorry, give me a second. Yeah, engineers in the next 5 years are essentially going to be defunct without AI skills, essentially. So the idea with engineers themselves, I don't know why this keeps happening. All right. So the idea with engineers themselves is the fact that without the use of data, there's not going to be things that you can do 5 years from now. And therefore, that brings me back to the civil engineering question. Within civil engineering, what are you majorly focused on? You're doing structural engineering, you're building facades, you're building actual buildings, 3D modeling, etc. The most fundamental things that a civil engineer does is understandings of stress, strain, etc. And these are things that AI has gone ahead and automated for you. So you don't need to write specific core programming or core computer programs to figure out what the ideal stress and strain are. You can just write an automated machine learning algorithm or an artificial intelligence algorithm, which will essentially tell you what the best conditions are. I'm going to go ahead and talk to you a little more about industries where artificial intelligence is already sort of revolutionizing. First, we talked about civil engineering and how stress and strain are the core fundamentals, and how that is something that artificial intelligence can actually help you automate, optimize, and then figure out the best possible stress and strain situations for individual components of whatever you're building, right? There are other sort of departments that I want to talk about. Sure. There's a very pertinent question from Mrs. Annapurna. She essentially asks me how AI is being useful in terms of solving the current crisis with coronavirus and COVID. This is something that I particularly have been very, very interested in and have been solving. So within the whole spectrum of the medical sort of a domain, right, medical and healthcare sector, one of the most important sort of inputs, or one of the most prevalent sort of inputs or diagnostic tools that you have right now, are using x-rays, CT scans, etc. What if I told you that artificial intelligence algorithms today have the capability to take an x-ray as an input? And this is something that is actually being done right now. We can take we can take x-rays as an input to my AI algorithm, go through individual pixels within the x-ray, and with a 99% accuracy be able to tell you if you have pneumonia, pneumothorax, coronavirus 2 within your lungs, and bunch of other pathologies. So artificial intelligence is essentially broken down components of the x-ray into boxes, into small size grids, and is able to analyze whether a particular pathogen is present within that grid. Of course, the way to do this in the past was that a physician or a radiologist would actually look at the x-ray using a lot of human experience look at the X-ray, figure out which box he thinks certain pathology is present in, and then test for that. All of that has been automated today. All of that, thanks to artificial intelligence algorithms, have become something that a machine can essentially do, and at a higher accuracy than any human can. Right now, this is a tool that has been deployed in a bunch of different hospitals, specifically in Wuhan, China, which was the epicenter of the pandemic. Alibaba, one of the biggest companies that have come out of China, has essentially taken a training data set, which is essentially a bunch of X-rays from people that have the coronavirus, trained an artificial intelligence algorithm on these X-rays, and then use that algorithm to figure out whenever a new X-ray is coming in, if there is a similarity between this particular X-ray and X-rays that already have coronavirus. And they've been able to do that at a 95% plus accuracy. So essentially, you can tell even without the need to go to a doctor. Once you have an X-ray, you can essentially tell whether you have corona or not. So that's been one of the biggest sort of revolutionizing streams that AI has done within the core healthcare sector, essentially. I'm going to see, I see a couple of questions here, and I'm going to get to that. There are other sort of fields that AI has already revolutionized. For example, marketing and advertising. Anytime you see within social media platforms, specifically Instagram, Facebook, even on WhatsApp, on news media, on popular television, etc., anytime you see ads that are very, very relevant to you, maybe you would have Googled what is the best educational institute in Hyderabad for high school. Maybe you would have Googled that, and you will see that the next day, or maybe even the very next minute, you would have seen ads that show up which say, hey, Gatik is the best education institute for high school. How are we able to do that? Using artificial intelligence. We are able to mine for patterns within your browsing data, essentially the kind of topics that you are looking at. And this is only possible because of the infrastructure and because of artificial intelligence. We are essentially able to go back into your browsing history, see all of the terms that you've Googled, all of the things that you particularly have gone through, and then move into targeting those ads to specifically you. All right. So this is essentially why we need to be studying AI. If we don't, we're going to be defunct in the next 5 years. High school is the right time to be doing that. This brings us to the third and probably one of the most important questions for you guys. How does Gatik teach AI? So I had the artificial intelligence faculty here at Gatik. I'll give you a little bit of a brief introduction to my profile and why that has been sort of a rich experience for me to be teaching AI. I'm a chemical engineer. I graduated from CBIT in Hyderabad. And then I had the opportunity to go do a master's degree from Carnegie Mellon University, which is the birthplace of AI. Professor Tom Mitchell, who I took a couple of classes with, essentially coined the term artificial intelligence. He's also someone who's been teaching AI for the last 10 years. I was fortunate enough to be taking a bunch of different classes with Professor Tom Mitchell, and that's where most of the curriculum design for this particular class that we teach at Gatik started. So this is not going to be a typical sort of a class where there's an examination at the end of it, where you'll have to sort of come to the class, study one night before the exam and pass. All of that's not going to happen. So this is a class that we teach in a very experimental, experiential sort of a module. Every single class, every single lecture will have pre-readings that you will have to do. We'll have the first 15 minutes of the class that you discuss essential sort of learnings from each one of these pre-readings that you've done. We will cover independent, individual concepts. And then at the end of it, there will be, at the end of the class itself, there will be a major project that either students in teams or individually will have to do. The grading within the class is going to be based on a continuous evaluation. So how you participate in pre-class readings within the class, how you do your assignments, and the major project. So the grade for the class is going to be a culmination or a combination of all of these. So one of the things a lot of people seem to be asking me is, do you actually get hands-on experience in terms of code, etc.? Absolutely. There is no AI, there is no just theoretical teaching at this point in time. We will teach a concept and there will be a practical implementation of that particular concept in the lab sections as well. We are still sort of figuring out the logistics for all of this, but there will essentially be code. There will be students will have to sit down in front of a computer, actually go through code for the entire module that's being taught. There's also a bunch of questions in terms of whether this is a certified course. At this point in time, unfortunately, Board of Intermediate does not have a certification process, but we've applied to an organization called H2O.ai, which is one of the leading providers of machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms and software. They also have a lot of curriculum. So we've been certified sort of by H2O.ai, one of the leading providers of all of these curriculum and content. So that's pretty much it. So we've learned today about what artificial intelligence is, how that differs from traditional computer programming. We've learned today about why you should be learning it, what sort of careers, what sort of impact will it have on the careers that you've taken up. We've also learned about how the structure of the course itself is going to be at Gatik. I will take questions now, so feel free to put in all of the questions in the comment section. I will go one by one. All right, so I have a few questions here. Right. Mr. Chandrasekhar asks me, what are other options for students after completing 10th grade apart from MPC and BIPC? MPC and BIPC seem to be the sort of regular routes that a lot of students seem to be taking, but there are a lot of bunch of really good options, and counselors at Gatik will be able to absolutely help you out. These sort of options will be in MEC, CC. There are a bunch of commerce related with AI, MPC with AI, etc. Get in touch with counselors at Gatik. They should be absolutely be able to help you out with options that you have and which one is the best suited for your child. Okay, so there's Mrs. Kavita who asks me, what are the best colleges for opting for AI after class 12? AI itself, unfortunately, not yet in India offered as an undergraduate course. By the time the child finishes 11th and 12th, we might see a few things. But AI itself is not offered as a standalone undergraduate degree at this point in time. However, traditional ways of getting into AI are by taking a bachelor's in computer science, bachelor's in computer applications. You can do any sort of engineering and get into AI. You could do any sort of econ or math and statistics sort of degrees, economics as well, and get into AI. A bunch of US universities have started to offer data science and artificial intelligence as undergraduate courses, and that's something that is worthwhile in terms of taking a look at. How is AI transforming agriculture? Right. So one of the biggest modeling that's been done with respect to AI in agriculture. This is a question Mr. Sachin Kumar asks me. Within agriculture, one of the biggest things that has happened is the ability to collate a bunch of different data sets. So taking soil samples, we can tell you what the content of individual minerals within soil is. Combine that with weather patterns and then be able to tell you what the best period to grow whatever crop you're trying to grow is, what's the best period to sow, what's the best period to till, etc., what's the best period to actually harvest the crops. All of this is something that AI is actually being used for within the core agriculture sector itself. There's another question by Mr. Somsekar who asks us, do we get to work with machines in Gatik? Absolutely. Within AI, there is a significant lab component, and students will also have to build essentially their major project or the project, which is the culmination of the entire 2 years of 11th and 12th grade teaching of the course offered under AI. So you will get a chance to actually use all of the theoretical knowledge, apply it to specific problems that you're actually trying to solve. And these will be things that you'll have to sit down in front of a machine, code, and then find the answers and solutions too. There's another question, really important question actually. Shailaja asks me, what are the programming languages being taught as part of the course? This is very interesting, right? In 11th grade, we don't really expose you front and out to a programming language yet. we sort of start with Scratch programming, which is something that MIT, which is a drag and drop interface. So you're actually not sitting in front of a computer and actually coding, but you're dragging and dropping elements, which teach you the workflow first. In 12th grade, we will be teaching Python and R, which form the essential programming languages that are used to actually do anything within the core AI. I'm looking for more questions. I think we have about a minute or so left. Let me know if I can overshoot that time. I don't know, but there's a minute left. Even before I move to other questions, thank you so much. I hope that you would have gotten as much out of this conversation in terms of what AI is, in terms of why you should be learning AI, in terms of how we teach it at Gatik. Any and all questions, absolutely welcome. Get in touch with our counselors. They should be able to help you out with a lot more. And just as a parting thought, stay home, stay safe, wash your hands, practice social distancing. This is the best time to be exploring AI, also the best time to be introspecting. Let's come together and fight this pandemic.